Okay, so this week in boxing, only one thing has really dominated the news, the headlines, and it's obviously the news that Conor Benn has tested positive for clomiphene, and as a result, his the fight today's a Saturday. Today he should be fighting Chris Eubank Jr. at catch weight, but obviously the fight has been called off, postponed, whatever you want to call it, and he failed obviously the VADA test for it. Now, in terms of clomiphene, first of all, what it's used for. So to those who don't know, it's a female fertility drug, which can be known or is known to sort of used to boost testosterone in men, but it's more commonly used really to sort of counter the effects of anabolic steroids, and effects being the worst sort of effects of it, to stop the likes of gyno and to stop different sort of side effects that you get from taking these anabolic steroids. And he's I think so. It was the VADA test that he failed, and I forget. My head goes. I think it's either the UK test either hasn't come back yet, or I think he tested negative for it. I forget, but either way, Conor Benn's obviously has now the fight's obviously been put out, and Conor Benn obviously now has a this narrative of being a drug cheat. And to be honest, I think it's something that I want to explore this, because being hitting court for this type of stuff. So remember back in when Canelo got caught for taking clenbuterol. Now Canelo had a bit of an alibi. I don't know what the word would be. He had an excuse for it, which is that it was in the meat that he ate. And with Benn, there isn't a something like this for him, because ultimately it's used to to help women's fertility. So unless he wants to become a woman, I don't see really what excuse you could have, unless he just denies it, which obviously he is doing. And he's obviously claiming he's a clean fighter. His dad's come out and said he's a clean fighter and all this. But I do wonder now, what I want to discuss, because I could go on and talk about how he's a drug cheat and that. To me, PEDs in boxing is actually, forget boxing, I'll go for the whole of sport. It's nothing that surprises me. I think most top athletes take something, but how clever you can be in and around the system. And to me, I think that's the kicker. There's so many athletes in boxing and MMA who I think are blatantly on steroids, but obviously can't say who. But there are some that you can just sort of tell that they're on something. And I think, to be honest, when I see Conor Benn physically, he looks a lot what would I say? He just looks more solid now. And I think in terms of his performance, the Vargas fight could be flagged as one where he looked very, very poor early in his career, Conor Benn. And I think the way he's developed, he's a lot quicker, he's a lot more explosive, more powerful now. And I think, I don't know if you could say it's a significant jump, because it looked like he also developed his skill, but it definitely feels, I think the Vargas fight was a fight where I do remember where it looked like he improved a lot. And I think for what in terms of the process that's going on now for Conor Benn, he obviously can't fight. He has to wait to see what the repercussions will be. The British Boxing Board of Control prohibited the fight, didn't want it to happen, rightly so. And the thing that's looking a bit bad, I think, for Eddie Hearn, for a lot of people involved in this, is that they were trying to get the fight to go ahead, and I think it's a very ugly situation for them at the moment. But it's been a cover to death. What I want to focus on here isn't necessarily the whole situation, because the situation is still unfolding, so I think it's best not to go for it at the moment. But I want to look at Conor Benn as a fighter, because Conor Benn, like I said, son of Nigel Benn, he's got all the name behind him. He has all the hype as well. I mean, yeah, he's looked fantastic since these last few years. He's looked very, very good. Obviously, he had a brilliant knockout in his last fight, and I think he's had this sort of legacy fight with Eubank Jr. with both of the names. I did a video again. I didn't think this fight was needed, but it was a big one. And now I do wonder, what does Conor Benn do? Because, like I said, the Canelo one you can kind of rebuff that, say that he was taking somebody else. There's always some reason fighters give an excuse to why they were taking a certain steroids. You know, sometimes it gets contaminated in the supplements you take. Sometimes, you know, in Billy Joe Saunders' case, it was the nasal spray. In Canelo's case, it was the meat. There's always a reason. Conor Benn has not gone out here, and this is where, if he does end up getting guilty, because I think there was talks about him maybe getting a 4-year suspension for this, which wouldn't make much sense, considering Canelo didn't get that long. But then this is, I guess, maybe a bit more serious. I do wonder, where does Conor Benn go from here? Is what I want to say. Is he finished in boxing? Now, he's not finished. He will fight again, I'm sure of it. But what I mean by this, in terms of British fighters, the biggest names in this country for boxing is Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury. But they're both in their 30s. Conor Benn's obviously on the come up. Had so much potential. Everybody was talking about how he was like his dad. And you know, he was somewhat of a likeable figure, was knocking people out, and there was so much hype behind him. And now it feels as if there is an issue for Conor Benn, because now he will forever be known as this drug cheater. So what I want to ask, where can he go from here? He was stuck in a welterweight division where I thought he wasn't even the most talented in that division. If you take out the two best in Crawford and Spence, you still got the likes of Virgil Ortiz. If you watch my channel, you know how much I love and rave about Jerome Boots Ennis. You still had, even in division, Keith Thurman was still about. You know, there was just so many talented fighters within the division. You had Josh Taylor coming up, possibly. So I look at this, and I thought he wasn't really the best, but he was definitely a player in the division. But now I think there's an issue for him and his career. You know, where can he realistically go from here? If he gets banned for 4 years, and I do remember there was a time, I forget what fight it was, but I forget what the testing, what the organisation was, but he did refuse, or not refuse. You can obviously opt in for certain drug testing. Some drug testing, as we know, is voluntary. And he opted out on one. I just forget what it was. And again, look at physically, Conor Benn's body, he just looks more solid now. So it doesn't really surprise me all that much. I'm not saying he 100% has been taking it, because we don't know, again, the whole investigation is still going on for it. The fact that they wanted to let the fight go was a bit of a... it's a crazy one, to be honest. But regardless, I do think that for Conor Benn, there isn't really much, I feel like, where he can go from here. Like I said, everybody will recognise him now for being a drug cheat. And I think, regardless of even if it's false, you see now those pictures that come up of him looking physical, one that I'll be using on the thumbnail of my video. And, you know, again, if he were to be out the ring for 4 years, I think, how old is Conor Benn? I want to say he's at least 24, maybe older. Conor Benn is, right, he's 26. 4 years, he's 30 years old. And he really this could kill his career, and not in a way that I think people recognise. You're losing out on 4 years' career, especially when you're in your mid-20s, is big. And I think, again, it doesn't surprise me what happened with Conor Benn, but you often look at a lot of fighters, and the sort of fighters in boxing, I almost look at and I think you can tell they're on something, but they almost hide it, and they're quite clever around the system. With Conor Benn, he obviously wasn't very smart with how he handled this whole thing. He obviously, like I said, he's come out, he's denied it, but I just don't know where he goes from here now. It's almost as if now we've had fighters who have pulled out for drug tests before. Gerald Bailey, if you remember him for the Anthony Joshua fight, I forget what he tested for, but it felt like he got tested. He had issues before. Dylan White got cleared to an extent when he tested positive. But again, there's a saying it's actually Tyson Fury also tested positive. So fighters have always had this, and there's an interesting video. I think it's Dr. Usman who was doing a video about. I think he said, I don't want to misquote him, but I remember seeing a comment where he said I think about 90% of boxers are on PEDs because obviously it gives you the edge. And I think for Conor Benn, he's in a real issue here because now it feels like because of how big this fight was and what's happened, everybody has almost piled in on him, and he's at a point now physically he looks a lot bigger than he did look a lot bigger than what he was. And again, he didn't look fantastic at the start of his career, and a lot of people feel like he's taking the PEDs because of that, to give him that edge. I don't know, like whatever, he'll obviously, if this just proves to be correct, which I think is looking very, very likely, he can give you the reasonings. But to me, I think for Conor Benn, I do think that this really has set him back so far. And I think he has lost, or would have lost, a lot of support within the British public. He was a fan favourite. I don't think he'll have many fans. I think Eubank has gained a lot of fans because, say what you want, he did everything clean. And the thing with Eubank, the fact that they were dragging him down to a weight that his dad actually wanted the fight to be called off, makes me just make you wonder actually if his dad sort of knew about that. Because the fact that Eddie Hearn and a lot of, I think, Matchroom were trying to still get this fight to go ahead, you just think if Eubank had got seriously hurt in there, which the way Ben is as a fighter, it's not entirely inconceivable, it would have been devastating for the sport. And I think it's the correct decision to postpone the fight. I don't really see I really want to see how Eddie Hearn gets out of this one, because Eddie Hearn has made a comment in the past which made me laugh, of how, it doesn't matter if it's one drug testing thing doesn't brand you a drug cheat. It's all about, if you test, I'm paraphrasing obviously, but if you test positive, you test positive. That is it. And now the same thing's happened, and I think he's talking about waiting for UCAD. It's just an ugly situation from that side and that Ben's team. And it's a shame because Conor Benn was a really promising fighter, and I honestly think his career is not over, but I just think I don't see a way back for him. He probably will still fight again, but I just don't see how at the age he is and in the division that he was competing in, if he could ever fulfill his potential the way he maybe could have. Obviously, a lot of people say the reason he had that sort of hype was because of the stuff he was taking, but again, it's almost as if now everything you look back on him in some fights are not tiring. You look at this power that he's developed over the last few years, it all just comes into question. And I'm interested to see how this one develops. But I think Conor Benn is seriously shot himself in the foot, and there's a lot of issues here. I think we obviously can exclude it from the welterweight sort of picture at the moment. Yeah, I don't really see. In an ideal world, maybe he can come back and his tests were incorrect on VADA, but I just don't see that being the case. I think with the way VADA are, there's very stringent tests, and again, UCAD are yet to do anything with it, but it just does not it doesn't shape up good for Conor Benn, I'll just put it that way. And I think it's a very, very awkward situation for boxing, and a shame, but what are you going to do? This is boxing sometimes. Not the first and won't be the last fighter to fail a test, but like I said, it's a very, very ugly situation for Ben's team as well, for his dad, who obviously is a legend, but it's not good because obviously he was looking like the heir apparent to him. For Eddie Hearn, dare I say, I don't think it's a bad shout to say that Eddie Hearn actually looks worse than this to Conor Benn does somehow, because of all the stuff he said in the past. His comments now talking about how a lot of people are trying to take the high ground. Him saying before that nobody cares about if it's UCAD who haven't tested you positive. It's about if you're a cheat, you're a cheat, and now him waiting for UCAD to give it. It's just a joke situation. But like I said, it isn't the first time, won't be the last time. I am going to do a whole other video on PEDs in boxing, but I do think that this is it. Just a sort of a quick reaction and just a question of whether Conor Benn, whether his career will ever, whether it'll be the same, whether is he finished in boxing? Can he come back and almost pretend like nothing happened? It's happened with some fighters, but with this one, I just think there's a different feeling to it. I feel like people have really woken up to the facts of what happens in boxing, and because he's such a hard profile fighter, I think it's really almost shocked a lot of people. I don't know why. I really don't. It's not surprising to me, but it's it's just one of the things that happens a lot. It happens in sport, not just in boxing. If you look at MMA, it happens all the time almost. I haven't had one for a while, but you had the numerous things with John Jones. You've had Anderson Silva. You've had TJ Dillashaw. Chad Mendes is another one. There's so many. So it isn't completely shocking to me, but again, we'll see what happens with this situation. But just my quick thoughts on this whole thing. The question out there I'll put, is Conor Benn finished? Can he come back from this? Can he, after all the backlash that's had? VADA are very, very stringent testing, and the fact that he failed their test is a very, very bad sign for him. And I don't think the British boxing public will really forgive him unless he... Look, people have short memory, so maybe he comes back, knocks everybody out, and we're all looking at it a different way. But I don't know. I just personally, the reason I asked this question, I just feel like it's different this time. I feel like people now have, like I said, woken up to the facts of what PEDs is in boxing and how serious these things can be. You know, a lot of people, they would prefer boxing to be clean, but it isn't the case. There are a lot of fighters who are on this sort of stuff. But in Conor Benn's case, to me, he just got caught taking it, and now I think his career is seriously on the back burner. But we'll see what happens. It's an interesting scenario nonetheless. But yeah, just my quick thoughts on this whole situation between Conor Benn and Chris Eubank, and Conor Benn failing the test. And yeah, sure more will come out about this and I'll cover it then. But yeah, until next time.
The argument of, well, it's all right with UCAD is totally irrelevant. You've signed drug testing with VADA, the best testing agency, in my opinion, in the sport. The bigger issue here, Rob, is, in all honesty, is the technicality of VADA versus UCAD. British Boxing Board of Control do not acknowledge VADA testing. We had a very similar situation with Billy Joe Saunders, where he had an adverse finding on his VADA test. Massachusetts banned him. The British Boxing Board of Control said his UCAD test was clear. We do not acknowledge VADA.